His Excellency President Ruto and the visiting delegation, Dr. Guru and the other investors, all the leaders and the people of Tororo. Africa has suffered for the last 500 years. First of all, under the attack of the slave traders and the colonialists, and when we started getting independence, which is 70 years ago, with Ghana, Sudan, we can say that Africa has been betrayed in these 70 years. It is very important for all the leaders to audit and see what's happening. Just now, I asked my staff here to check on the internet, which you can all do. What is the size of the GDP of the whole of Africa? My girl here checked on the internet. It is $2.8 trillion. The whole of Africa. What is the size of the GDP of USA? 30 trillion. The United States is a quarter of the land area of Africa, and their population is 1/5. But you here, our wealth, 2.8 trillion, America's wealth, 30 trillion. That's more than 10 times bigger. Now, this is what we saw when we were part of the student movement in the 1960s. And we told leaders at that time what I'm telling you today. And we had to go through many phases, fighting and so on. So when eventually we came into government, we put out the 10 points program of the NRM. And point number 5 was pointing to what is the cause of this stagnation of Africa. The cause is the hemorrhage of development energies from Africa to other parts of the world. Especially, initially the export of slaves, because initially slaves were being exported, labor, free labor was being exported. Then later on, now raw materials. So what we are doing here is not just launching a project. It is part of the liberation process of Africa. It is part of the betrayal, usaliti of Africa. This iron ore, the hematite, which is very pure. Some years ago, not in Kabare, but another place called Kanungu, there is also the same hematite there. A group came from India, and they agreed with my local villagers there in Kanungu to export unprocessed iron ore, obtare. I was telling you, Guru, they don't have enough words in English. So I was giving him our words here. Obtare. Obtare is the word for iron ore. So those fellows had agreed with an Indian company to sell obtare to India. And then when I called them, how much are you going to get? $47 a ton. And how much would this Indian get? That time it was like $900 a ton. And then all the jobs would go. You would lose money, you would lose jobs. So what we are doing here is extending what I have done in the whole sector of minerals. I have banned the export of unprocessed minerals, all of them. Let them stay in the ground. If the present generation are asleep, kama watu wale wamelala, labda huko mbele wengine watakuja ambao wako na macho ya kuona. So I want to congratulate Dr. Guru for helping us to fulfill our vision of adding value to this Butare. Mpigie makofi. Also, congratulate His Excellency President Ruto for encouraging Mr. Guru to come here. Now you have heard the implications of this project. Uganda is now squandering $500 million per year to export flat sheets and the other metals from which we make mabati and make mitayimbwa. Mitayimbwa, Wakenya wanaita mitayimbwa chuma. Chuma. But here, chuma is general word for steel, for metal. But for the steel bars, we can lend here a word called mitayimbwa. That's what we mean by steel bars. I have already told Mr. Guru. So, these raw materials for those intermediate products, for mabati and from Tayimbwa, are taking much of the money. The other specialized steel, like the one of the railway and the dams, that one we may not go for because we need to be sure about the demand. But for the mabati and for the Mtayimbwa, we must support Mr. Guru to produce them here, so that, because that's the biggest money that is going, the 500 million. And I hear that East Africa spends $5 billion on steel products, steel imports. You have heard that Kenya spends $800 million. That's what the president told you. So this is really squandering of Africa's resources. That's why you see the GDP is stunted, 2.8 trillion. That's more or less like the GDP of one smaller country like UK. If you see the GDP of UK is maybe about that. But here we are, 1.5 billion people, with presidents, prime ministers, ministers, all sorts of excellencies, but with 2.8 trillion for the whole continent, when the USA has got a GDP of 30 trillion. This is really shameful. So, I'm very glad that we are here. You are all part of the liberation process. I want to thank you, Mr. Guru. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you, who makes you do things. And I want to thank His Excellency na Wakenya wote kwa kutuunga mkono kwa hatua hii. Now, I'm glad Mr. Guru is going to start another facility in Kaware now for upgrading the iron ore, which is low grade, to the high grade, which will create jobs for 1,600 people. Now, regarding the job distribution, I want to advise Guru to be a bit, to broaden a bit, because the people of Kabale and you, the Bateso, be careful. Don't push things too far. You may cause us a problem. Because the Bachiga are saying we must follow our iron ore and get the jobs over there. Because the factory is supposed to be in the area, but we put it here, far away from the raw material, because of other economic factors. So when it comes to job distribution, please remember the Kawale people. You should sit down, we should sit and talk carefully. Don't run around too much with the Bateso. Be careful. You can cause us a problem. Especially the Kabale group needs to be accommodated.